Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. The United States launched an operation today to seize a Russian-flagged oil tanker in the Atlantic following a weeks-long pursuit. A second tanker was seized in the Caribbean. President Trump says the U.S. will receive up to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil. Plus, why Nicolás Maduro's capture is raising questions about Chinese-made air defense systems. National security concerns in the Arctic in the spotlight. The White House press secretary says using the U.S. military is on the table to deter adversaries in the Arctic region. The federal government is moving to claw back millions in taxpayer dollars from what it calls widespread Medicaid fraud in Minnesota. One official says it's just the tip of the iceberg. Los Angeles residents look back on the wildfires that scorched LA County a year ago. Many still coping with the aftermath of the disaster.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Breaking news, a federal law enforcement shooting was reported this morning in South Minneapolis. In a statement moments ago, the city of Minneapolis asked residents to stay away from the scene because of a shooting, quote, involving federal law enforcement. U.S. Border Patrol Chief Gregory Bavina was present at the scene. City Council Vice President Jamal Osman said the woman who was shot was a civilian. He said she was shot while inside a vehicle. Governor Tim Walz said his team is being briefed and asked the public to remain calm. Mayor Jacob Frey said the shooting involved an ICE agent. We'll keep you updated as the situation develops. The United States launched an operation today to seize a Russian-flagged oil tanker in the Atlantic. The Justice Department announced the seizure of the Bello 1 for violations of U.S. sanctions. The move follows a weeks-long pursuit starting near Venezuela last month. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth confirmed the news on X, writing, quote, "The blockade of sanctioned and illicit Venezuelan oil remains in full effect anywhere in the world." The vessel was previously known as the Bello 1 and has been renamed the Marinera. It's on the U.S. sanctions list for evading oil restrictions tied to Venezuela. The Department of Homeland Security led the operation with military support. U.S. law enforcement officials are now aboard that ship. There were no reports of shots fired during the boarding. The seizure comes after the tanker was tracked near Scotland, drawing criticism from Moscow, which says the vessel was operating in international waters under Russian law. The U.S. has also seized 2 other sanctioned tankers near Venezuela in recent weeks as part of its blockade of illicit oil shipments. And in a separate operation, the U.S. Southern Command said it captured a second Venezuela-linked tanker in the Caribbean Sea. In a social media post, Southern Command said the Department of War, in coordination with the Department of Homeland Security, apprehended a stateless, sanctioned dark fleet motor tanker without incident. The vessel is known as the Sophia. Southern Command said it was operating in international waters in conducting illicit activities. The U.S. Coast Guard is escorting the ship to the U.S. And more developments from Venezuela. President Trump announced yesterday the U.S. will soon receive 30 to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil in the near future. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that, plus a look at how Chinese defense systems in Venezuela failed to impress.
President Trump wrote on Truth Social that the oil the U.S. receives from Venezuela will be sold at market price and that money will be controlled by him as President of the United States. Trump says he will ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States. The transfer could be worth nearly $3 billion, with oil trading at roughly $56 a barrel. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum discusses utilizing oil from Venezuela, speaking on Fox News.
You need to dilute that heavy crude with a lighter product. And of course, we have an excess of that lighter product here because the shale oils that come out of the shale revolution in America are perfect for blending. It's great news for jobs. It's great news for gas prices going forward. It's great news for America, and it's great news for Venezuela.
Burgum says Venezuela has an opportunity now to have capital come in and rebuild their economy.
They have larger oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, one of the richest countries in the world. Venezuela, one of the poorest countries in the world.
Ambassador to the UN, Michael Waltz, pushed back on UN criticism of the Maduro operation, speaking on Fox News.
I don't know why they're so upset. As I pointed out at the Security Council, over 50 countries didn't even recognize Maduro because he stole the election. So it's hard to figure out what they're so upset about. Well, I think we know the answer. It's because it's President Trump, and he's a man of action and took real action.
Waltz says the Venezuelan people are going to be better off.
And look, at the end of the day, this was the right thing to do. President Trump took bold action and will continue to swing and doge that ridiculous organization called the United Nations.
The lightning operation to capture Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, punched in and out of Caracas before its air defenses could mount an effective response. The raid raised uncomfortable questions for China about the limits of the Chinese-supplied systems that Venezuela has leaned on, especially anti-stealth radar that China advertised as capable of spotting and stopping U.S. stealth aircraft. Analyst Yu Tsung-chi, a retired major general from Taiwan, says the operation suggested deeper weaknesses, corruption in China's defense industry, and a lack of reliability of the technology and command structure meant to tie those systems together. Yu described it as a system built to look modern on paper and intimidating in propaganda, but falls apart under the demands of real combat. Yu says neither Chinese or Russian air defense systems made the slightest bit of difference once the U.S. brought real-time intelligence, electronic warfare, and precision weapons to bear. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Thanks to Daniel for that report. The State Department has expanded its list of nations whose citizens will be subject to visa bonds of up to $15,000 to enter the United States. It has added 25 more nations. The latest additions will bring it to 38. The newly added countries include Algeria, Cuba, Nepal, Nigeria, Venezuela, and others. B1 and B2 visas are used for short-term business and tourism travel. Citizens of those nations who are eligible are required to post a bond ranging from $5,000 to $15,000, with the amount being determined during the visa interview. The list of nations stems from a 12-month visa bond pilot program the department launched in August last year. It targeted countries with high visa overstay rates, insufficient screening and vetting, or those that offer citizenship to individuals via investment. Next, Warner Brothers Discovery has rejected Paramount's latest takeover bid. The media giant told shareholders to stick with a competing offer from Netflix. Warner Brothers leadership has repeatedly rebuffed Paramount's bids. The company has urged shareholders to back the sale of its streaming and studio business for Netflix for $72 billion. Warner Brothers Discovery said today that its board determined Paramount's offer is not in the best interests of the company or its shareholders. Paramount has offered $77.9 billion for the entire company and gone straight to shareholders with a hostile bid. Last month, Paramount added a guarantee from Oracle founder Larry Ellison to back $40.4 billion in equity financing for the company's offer. Larry Ellison is the father of Paramount CEO David Ellison. Paramount also increased its promised payout to shareholders to $5.8 billion if the deal is blocked by regulators. And House Speaker Mike Johnson this morning told reporters that he doesn't expect the use of military force in Greenland. Here's the speaker.
I don't think anybody's talking about using military force in Greenland. They're looking at diplomatic channels and all.
The White House said they're keeping military options there open.
The U.S. always has military options for everything. I think it's a general statement. I think with Greenland, it's very clear that we are working on their diplomatic channels. My own governor at my state of Louisiana has been appointed to that for that role, an emissary, and we expect a productive outcome of that.
I think it's not against Greenland's interests. There's a lot of thoughtful discussion to be had there, and that's what we expect is going to happen. So all this stuff about military action and all that, I don't think it's I don't even think that's a possibility. I don't think anybody's seriously considering that, and in the Congress, we're certainly not.
And Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth held a closed classified briefing today on Venezuela for the full U.S. Senate and House of Representatives. Rubio told reporters that he will meet with Denmark next week regarding Denmark. Take a listen.
Why is the administration not taking Denmark's offer to discuss the situation in Greenland? And
I'll be meeting with them next week.
But will you take military intervention off the table?
I'm not here to talk about Denmark or military intervention. I'll be meeting with them next week. We'll have those conversations with them then. But I'm not having anything further to add to that today. Well, that's always been the president's intent from the very beginning. He said it very early on. I mean, this is not new. He talked about it in his first term, and he's not the first U.S. president that has examined or looked at how could we acquire Greenland. There's an interest there. But so I just reminded them of the fact that not only did Truman want to do it, but President Trump's been talking about this since his first term. What I think the White House said yesterday is what I will tell you now, and I've always said. The president always retained the option. Every president, not this president, every president always retains the option. I'm not talking about Greenland. I'm just talking about globally. If the president identifies a threat to the national security of the United States, every president retains the option to address it through military means.
Joining us now to discuss Greenland and President Trump's recent doubling down on its importance to U.S. national security is geopolitical analyst Rod D. Martin. Good to have you with us today, Rod, and speaking with you on a whole entirely new topic for the two of us. President Trump going in hard there. It did seem for a little while like the administration was saying military use is possible, but there we just heard the speaker saying it's not likely or potentially even possible. I'm assuming he means legal. What's your sense of what's legal here and what's likely?
Well, one of the benefits of Donald Trump is that he is very explicit that all options always exist. That doesn't mean that we're going to use all options, for goodness sake. It just means they exist. And it keeps people off balance and it focuses them in negotiation. We spent about a quarter century, if not more, under the illusion that it was our responsibility to telegraph to the world literally every single thing we were going to do. So they knew years before we acted what our limits were, what our boundaries were. It makes it impossible to negotiate a good deal. Trump never, ever does that. He always comes out with these maximal approaches that put people in a frame of mind to try to negotiate the best deal they can, and we end up with the best deal for Donald Trump. So that's what's happening here. And honestly, in Greenland, the solution isn't even a U.S. annexation through a purchase. The best possible outcome looks like Palau and the Marshall Islands and the Federated States of Micronesia, where they are independent, sovereign countries, but they have a free association compact with the United States. They get all the benefits of sovereignty and none of the expenses. And that solves everybody's problem, honestly, including Denmark's, because Greenland is a money pit for Denmark and they're not able to develop it.
And we heard President Trump speaking about the numerous Chinese and Russian ships circling Greenland. According to him, some critics have pushed back on that. What's your sense of how true that is and how much of a risk that is to the U.S.?
Well, the critics are just willfully blind. This is a reality, and it comes from the widespread belief that global warming is going to result in an ice-free Arctic. Now, whether or not you believe that's true, if it is true, Greenland becomes essential real estate from a trade route perspective because it is vastly shorter and vastly cheaper to ship around the world by going through the Arctic. Now, even if global warming never happens and we plunge into an ice age, we're moving into an era of increased emphasis on nuclear power. Nuclear power gives you some options with regard to icebreakers that you wouldn't normally have, and the Soviets pioneered this during the Cold War. No question the Chinese are going to do the same, and we could too. So either way you cut it, you end up with Greenland being important for trade, important for defense, and essential, actually, as we try to diversify away from Chinese rare earths and from foreign sources of oil as well. There's a tremendous amount of energy in Greenland, once again, that Denmark is unable to exploit, and it would make every Greenlander crazy rich.
Now, President Trump, we just heard, was reinforcing his role in uniting and strengthening NATO, perhaps in response to some of the European caution around the recent talk about Greenland and potential military use, all the options being on the table. What's your sense of what would happen to the alliance if we were to see the U.S. potentially using force in Greenland or in other ways taking control?
Honestly, I think we would get about 31 strongly worded letters. I don't think any of these people have the slightest intention of getting rid of their sugar daddy. The United States pays 70.5% of the costs of the defense of NATO. That's 70.5% from one country in a 32 nation alliance. And there's no getting around this. The only way out of that is exactly what Donald Trump has been pushing our NATO allies to do, which is stand up real militaries, to go to 5% of GDP defense expenditures for every ally so that they are actual partners, not dependents. And this is a bargaining chip in that. He's not going to invade Greenland. But if they have to worry about it, they actually have some incentive to do what they've already committed to do and improve their militaries and make their partnership with us closer and more integral. This is a win-win for everybody. And honestly, if Greenland ended up in a more U.S.-centric orbit, ideally through that free association compact model that we see with 3 different Pacific countries who've already done this, everybody wins. And nobody wins more than the Greenlanders, but the Danes win, and the United States absolutely does.
And lastly, let's just take a quick look at the Danish claim to Greenland.
Well, the Danish claim to Greenland is kind of interesting and fraught. And the part that we just magically gloss over here is that a bunch of people who are highly opposed to imperialism and European colonialism are actually maintaining in Greenland a European colony. So all the people talking about decolonization are just ignoring that little detail. And the truth of the matter is that Greenlanders overwhelmingly support independence. They haven't voted for it yet, although they have voted for the precursors to it, probably because they realize that 57,000 people can't afford the costs of being an independent state. They can't give up the $1 billion a year they get in subsidy from Denmark. They can't afford a defense. They can barely afford a police force, and they certainly can't afford to put embassies all over the world. This is exactly where the Free Association Compact idea really, really resonates. It gives them all the benefits of independence with none of the costs. But Trump isn't going to talk about that in the short term. In the short term, he's going to throw out these maximal ideas and freak everybody out very deliberately, and then they start being creative and negotiating toward where he really wants to end up. And again, if you've been reading Donald Trump since he wrote Art of the Deal in '87, Surviving at the Top in '90, Art of the Comeback in '97, had The Apprentice on TV for 15 years. If you've been paying attention, this is how he always negotiates everything, and he usually wins.
It certainly is a different playbook. Thank you so much for your time today. Watching it all closely, Rod Martin. Appreciate it.
And you.
President Trump sending a message to the NATO alliance today. Trump says he made the alliance stronger, adding that the U.S. will always stand behind NATO. Trump emphasized that he got member nations to commit to spending 5% of their GDP on defense. According to the old agreement, member nations had to spend 2% on defense. Trump wrote, quote, "Everyone said that couldn't be done, but it could, because beyond all else, they're all my friends." Trump added, "We will always be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us. The U.S., the only nation that China and Russia fear and respect, is the Donald J. Trump rebuilt USA," he said. The message comes after Trump discussed expanding U.S. influence in Greenland in recent days, which has received pushback from several NATO allies. And Ukraine is seeking a clear answer from its partners on what their response would be in the case of a future Russian attack. This just one day after more than 30 countries, including the U.S., met in Paris to finalize security guarantees for Ukraine.
If there is aggression again, will all partners give a strong response to the Russians? I'm asking this very question to all our partners, and I haven't received a clear, unambiguous answer yet.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says he sees that partners are willing to provide strong security guarantees, but he added that the guarantees have to be legally binding, supported by the nation's parliaments and the U.S. Congress. He also said the American side has been productive in achieving real results, but according to Zelenskyy, more is needed. He told reporters he hoped to meet President Trump soon, possibly in Washington, to discuss U.S. security guarantees. The U.S., for the first time, backed a coalition of Ukraine's allies in vowing to provide security guarantees. The agreement followed a coalition of the willing summit in Paris yesterday, as you've been hearing.
The United States, for the first time on Tuesday, backed a broad coalition of Ukraine's allies in vowing to provide security guarantees that leaders said would include binding commitments to support the country if it is attacked by Russia again. The pledge came at a summit in Paris of the so-called Coalition of the Willing to firm up security guarantees to reassure Kyiv in the event of a ceasefire with Russia. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said after the summit that President Donald Trump, quote, strongly stands behind security protocols.
Those security protocols are meant to, A, deter any attacks, any further attacks in Ukraine, and B, if there are any attacks, they're meant to defend, and they will do both.
A statement by coalition leaders also said that allies will participate in a proposed U.S.-led ceasefire monitoring and verification mechanism. Talks to bring the almost four-year conflict to an end have accelerated since November. Until recently, much of the focus was on pledges of military aid for Ukraine's forces and possible contributions to an international reassurance force. But attention has now shifted to legally binding guarantees to come to Kyiv's aid in the event of another attack by Moscow. Kyiv has long said it cannot be safe without guarantees that are comparable to NATO's mutual defense agreement to deter Russia from attacking again. Moscow wants any peace deal to bar Ukraine from military alliances.
Iran is facing growing unrest as nationwide protests entered their 11th day there, with demonstrators issuing a direct appeal to President Trump. Human rights groups report at least 36 people killed and more than 1,200 arrested. NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with the Persian Epoch Times about what makes these protests unique in comparison with past movements.
An opposition group says demonstrators have effectively taken control of two western cities, Abdanan and Malek-Shahi, with crowds celebrating in the streets and chanting slogans against Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Protests and strikes have now spread to dozens of cities across the country. In Alam province, witnesses report tear gas was fired inside a hospital as authorities tried to arrest wounded protesters. Images circulating on social media show a woman holding a sign making a direct appeal to President Trump, saying, "Please don't let them kill us." President Trump earlier issued a warning to the regime.
We'll take a look. We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Persian Epoch Times publisher Shahrzad Ghaneh says the regime is listening.
Inside Iran, the leadership takes any direct threat from Donald Trump and his administration very seriously. Even if they publicly they show that they are dismissing it, but they remember that Trump has acted very unpredictably before.
Ghaneh says Trump's words signal to Iranians that Washington is paying attention.
This really matters to Iranian people, that they're feeling that this time they have this support from the U.S. administration. So for protesters, the message is offering psychological reassurance to the people. And they're feeling they're not completely invisible.
Gane says these protests are unique in several ways. One key difference is the participation of merchants in Tehran's historic Grand Bazaar, a group that has traditionally stayed out of political unrest.
Usually they wouldn't intervene much. They're considered one of the most conservative groups in Iran. And the bazaar is the biggest center for the trade in Iran.
Another major difference from past uprisings, she says, is growing public support for the exiled crown prince.
You can see it everywhere, especially among young Iranian people that they're chanting his name.
The crown prince, Reza Pahlavi, has said he is willing to lead a transition until a referendum is held. He speaks optimistically on Fox News.
In all these years, I've never seen an opportunity as we see today in Iran.
Gane says signs of dissent are also emerging from within establishment circles.
A very interesting thing is happening is the hashtag saying Khamenei is not my leader. It's going viral.
She adds that Trump administration sanctions have deepened economic pressure on the regime.
They're not giving the money into the country like Biden and Obama administration. They were giving the Islamic Republic money.
Apart from basic needs like water, electric, and food, Gane says Iranians want their dignity back.
They are peaceful people, and they know that Islamic Republic is not representing what type of people they are. You know, if you go, Iranian people are considered as very kind people. I would say kindest people in the world. Their hospitality is very famous among the tourists that go inside the Iran. But their image is not representing who they are, right? In the news. So making Iran great again, they want to give back all these things.
In recent days, the U.S. has transported 12 military aircraft to 2 bases in the U.K., leading to speculation about their possible deployment in the event of any Iran engagement. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Thank you, Daniel. Tokyo today said China's ban on dual-use exports targeting Japan is unacceptable. This occurs amid increasing tensions between the two major Asian economies. Here's more.
Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary, Minoru Kihara, said Wednesday that China's export ban on dual-use items was, quote, absolutely unacceptable and deeply regrettable. A dual-use item describes goods or software that can be used for both civilian and military purposes. The term often includes rare earth elements needed for making drones, computer chips, and other devices. Kihara declined to say which industries could be impacted, saying it remained unclear exactly what items would be targeted. China's ban was announced Tuesday and is its latest move in response to Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's remarks on Taiwan. Late last year, she said a Chinese attack on the democratically governed island could pose an existential threat to Japan. Beijing, which claims Taiwan as its territory, demanded she retract the remarks, something she has refused to do. Meanwhile, Chinese media reported that Beijing is considering tightening reviews of rare earth export licenses to Japan more broadly. Analysts warn this could have far-reaching consequences for Japan's manufacturing sector, especially automakers. Despite efforts to diversify supplies since China last curbed rare earth exports in 2010, about 60% of Japan's imports still come from China. Economists estimate a 3-month disruption could cost Japanese businesses around $4.2 billion. For now, customs data shows no signs of decline, with Chinese rare earth exports to Japan at a 1-year high in November.
Coming up, a massive fraud scheme took center stage on Capitol Hill today. Lawmakers held their first public hearing with a witness alleging retaliation against whistleblowers. And Los Angeles residents look back on the wildfires that scorched LA County 1 year ago. Many continue to cope with the aftermath of that disaster. Welcome back. The Trump administration announced a new slate of dietary guidelines today. It recommends Americans eat more protein and less sugar than previously advised, and that consumers avoid highly processed foods to achieve a healthy diet. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt briefed reporters earlier. She was joined by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins. Take a listen.
These new guidelines are informed by the best and most reliable research on health and nutrition, particularly as it relates to the role of our diets in the prevalence of chronic disease in the country. They are also These guidelines are easy to read and understand, so every American, young and old, can access this information that literally has the power to change lives. But these are not just an updated guideline. These are the foundation to all federal food programs in our country.
Eat real food. This is the main message of the new Dietary Guidelines for Americans 2025 to 2030, which encourage households and schools to prioritize whole, nutrient-dense foods. That means more protein, more dairy, more healthy fats, more whole grains, more fruits and vegetables, whether they are fresh, frozen, canned, or dried. We are finally putting real food back at the center of the American diet. Real food that nourishes the body, restores health, fuels energy, and builds strength.
The guidelines are the latest step in the Trump administration's Make America Healthy Again agenda. Kennedy and Rollins had promised to simplify the guidelines. They also pledged to remove what they called undue influence from food companies. The guidelines are issued every 5 years. They're published by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Agriculture. The new version includes changes promised by Kennedy. It strongly discourages eating highly processed foods, as we mentioned, and it warns against adding sugar. Kennedy has linked high sugar and processed food consumption to chronic disease in the U.S. Other recommendations remain unchanged. These include prioritizing fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. They also keep the cap on saturated fat at 10% of daily calories. Georgia is set to hold a special election on March 10th to replace former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Greene resigned on Monday. In letters to Governor Brian Kemp and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, she wrote, quote, "It has been my honor and privilege to serve the people of Georgia's 14th congressional district. Now voters will choose who gets to finish her term." Greene's district, northwest of Atlanta, is considered a Republican stronghold. And Texas agriculture officials are again warning residents about unsolicited seed packages being mailed from China. The Texas Department of Agriculture says more than 1,100 mystery seed packages have been collected since February of last year, and they were sent to over 100 locations statewide. The most recent package was recovered on December 29th. Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller says the seeds pose a potential threat to crops, ecosystems, and the food supply. Officials say similar mailings have been reported in several other states, making it a nationwide concern. Investigators say the seeds are sacred lotus, an invasive aquatic plant when introduced outside its native range. Texans who receive suspicious packages are urged not to open, plant, or throw those packages away, and instead to contact the Texas Department of Agriculture for proper handling instructions. The trial of one of the first police officers on the scene of the 2022 Uvalde school shooting opened yesterday. Prosecutors accused him of criminally failing to try to stop the slaughter, while the defense said the officer did the best he could at the chaotic and confusing scene. Here are the details.
One of the first police officers on the scene of the mass shooting at a Texas elementary school in 2022 is now the first to stand trial. Former Uvalde School District Police Officer Adrian Gonzalez was charged in 2024 with 29 counts of child endangerment. According to the indictment, he, quote, failed to engage, distract, and delay the shooter. It also said that he failed, quote, to follow his active shooter training to respond to gunfire by advancing toward the gunfire. Special Prosecutor Bill Turner told the jury that within seconds of arriving at the school, a teacher informed Gonzalez where the gunman was.
She says, "He's over there." She urges him to go get him. Adrian Gonzalez says, "Where?" "Over there. He's wearing black. He's in the teacher's parking lot." As shots are ringing out. This is not confusion. He gets on the radio and says, shots are fired, he's wearing black, he's in the parking lot. He knows where he is. But Adrian Gonzalez remains at the south side of the school.
The gunman first crashed his car into a culvert near the school and fired on a funeral parlor across the street. Gonzalez's attorney, Nicolás Maduro, said his client did not understand the gunman was intent on killing students. He said Gonzalez rather thought he was trying to escape the scene of the crash and funeral parlor shooting.
This is what Adrian did. I mean, the government wants to make it seem like he just sat there, you know. He didn't just sit there. He did what he could with what he knew at the time, and this was fluid and it was a dynamic situation.
19 students and 2 teachers were killed in the attack. The 376 officers who responded to the Robb Elementary shooting have faced sharp criticism for waiting 77 minutes before confronting the gunman. State and federal investigations found that officers left the 18-year-old shooter alone inside a classroom with children while weighing how to confront him. By the time a tactical team led by Border Patrol officers stormed in, the toll had reached among the worst in U.S. history.
One of the most notorious spies in U.S. history has died at the age of 84. U.S. Bureau of Prisons says Aldrich Ames died in custody on Monday. A Maryland medical examiner will determine the cause of death. The former CIA case officer was arrested by the FBI in 1994 and sentenced to life in prison for espionage against the U.S. He was responsible for the arrest and eventual execution of numerous Soviet and Russian officials secretly working on behalf of the U.S. intelligence community as double agents. Ames joined the CIA in 1962 as a low-level document analyst. He rose through the ranks up to the case officer rank and specialized in targeting the Soviet Union. According to his guilty plea agreement, Ames went to the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. in 1985 and volunteered to spy against the U.S. It's estimated Ames received about $2.5 million from Russia and the Soviet Union for his years of spying. And it's been 1 year since devastating wildfires burned through Los Angeles. Today, communities are still coping with the aftermath of that disaster. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more as locals look back on that tragedy.
1 year ago, a blaze tore through LA's Pacific Palisades neighborhood. Another scorched the town of Altadena, northeast of Los Angeles. Pacific Palisades resident Perry Richards remembers how quickly the disaster unfolded.
Unbelievable, right? Well, as you know, January 7th was a day that we'll never forget. One spark turned into a full-blown catastrophic event on January 7th.
The 2 fires that broke out on January 7th, 2025 killed more than 30 people in Los Angeles County. Over 17,000 homes and buildings were leveled. Richard stayed behind to save what he could of his home.
So I pull up my garden hose, no mask, no goggles or anything, and I just started watering down for about 45 minutes.
His cliffside home remains uninhabitable, but he's hopeful he'll be able to return.
It's a miracle that this house still stands. Hopefully it's a beacon of hope that we're going to move back here and we're going to help reestablish what we left and what we lost and try to recreate the wonderful community of the Palisades.
Across the street, John Emerson's home was completely destroyed. He said the community was on its own when the fires broke out.
There were no fire department here. It was just homeowners that had managed to get into, either try to save their home or just to find out what happened.
The fixed income retiree is considering his family's future. He says the city should have done more.
We didn't sign up for this at all, and so I'm still pretty mad about it in terms of the city's responsibility.
Richards expressed similar feelings.
The emotion of it all is, we just feel abandoned, I think, at the end of the day.
Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Next, the 2026 Consumer Electronics Show is underway in Las Vegas with companies from around the world unveiling their latest technology. NTD's Christina Corona takes us to the Samsung show floor for a closer look at what's new.
We're here in the city of Las Vegas at CES 2026, where the latest tech is on display. From new gadgets to cutting-edge innovation, we'll be walking the show floor and showing you what stands out this year.
At the Samsung show floor, we got a hands-on experience with the latest Samsung Galaxy Z Trifold.
This is a fully functioning phone on the outside with a 6.5-inch dynamic AMOLED display, but then when you want to take it to the next level, you don't just fold it once, you fold it twice, and now you have a 10-inch dynamic AMOLED 2X display on the inside.
He says multitasking is taken to a whole new level by allowing users to run several apps at once on the expanded screen.
Maybe I wanted to go ahead and do things like take notes, but then drag and drop photos into my notes. I can do that natively. You can actually run 3 different apps side by side on the inside display of this.
Samsung is also showcasing its newest AI-powered televisions for 2026, including an AI Soccer Mode Pro designed to enhance the viewing experience for soccer fans worldwide. Viewers can customize game audio by lowering crowd noise or boosting the commentary, getting information on individual players, and even pull up real-time stats and AI predictions on who's likely to win the match, all by just speaking to your TV. Samsung is also showing off a transparent micro LED screen, giving a glimpse at where screen technology is headed. Because the screen is brighter, more light passes through each pixel, making it clearer to see what's behind it. Samsung is also debuting an AI-powered beauty mirror that analyzes skin conditions like wrinkles and pigmentation, then offers personalized skincare recommendations. The mirror doubles as a smart display, blending beauty tech with next-generation screen technology. These products show how Samsung is blending everyday technology with smarter, more personalized experiences.
Reporting from the Samsung show floor right next to the transparent micro LEDs, Christina Corona, NTD News, Las Vegas.
And thanks to Christina for that report. That's all we have time for this hour, but if you have any feedback on our show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at news.today@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'll cover more news right after this break.